I don't think you can overstate the importance of this threat to the U.S. It is a threat to literally the foundations of our economy. It could crowd out future investments in skills, technologies, and the equipment we need to produce. And the Joint Chiefs of Staffs have identified it as our greatest national security threat. So this is something that crosses all of the policy spectrum and something we need to address immediately. There is no option. We have to reduce the future debt. So if the particulars of the Joint Committee aren't successful in Congress, a future Congress is going to have to turn around and get right back on exactly the same agenda. It's going to have to address the entitlement programs so that they will survive to the next generation and not threaten the budget and the economy. And we'll have to undertake comprehensive tax reform so that we can pay our bills and grow more rapidly as an economy. I think there's no substitute for a go big approach. Congress is going to have to make some tough choices. There are political consequences to those tough choices that we shouldn't be blind to. And so if you're going to make it worthwhile, you might as well solve big problems while undertaking those political hits. So I think the committee should think hard about entitlement reform across the board, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, the Affordable Care Act, and think about tax reform so that we can be more successful internationally. All of the polling suggests that the American people are literally disgusted with what is going on in Washington, D.C. The debt ceiling debate was a turning point in many of the polls, something comparable to other national crises like the Iran hostage event. Congress needs to recognize that they are deeply unpopular and perceived as not working in the people's interest. The number one thing they could do would be to successfully address the threat of the debt and do it in a way that is consistent with what the public believes that Congress should do. I think there were some important lessons of the Bowles-Simpson Commission that the Super Committee should take a look at. The Commission said that we had a national moment of truth, so we need a big solution, so go big. The fundamental problem is spending, and the solutions will have to address entitlement programs. I think the debt ceiling debate and the bill that went with it addressed discretionary spending enough for the moment, so focus on entitlement spending. The Commission also said if you're going to look at revenues, you have to do tax reform, so the Super Committee would be well served to look at tax reform as well. Address the growth of Social Security and Medicare because those are the two largest entitlement programs, and both are running red ink right now. Social Security is running about $50 billion of red ink. Medicare borrows $280 billion a year right now from the general revenue. That means those programs won't survive for the next generation of seniors, and that's a disgrace from the perspective of providing an adequate social safety net. So fixing them would meet our obligation to have an adequate social safety net. It would also mean less red ink and a big budget deficit, and that would take away the threat to our economy from a burgeoning debt. No signal would be stronger to international capital markets than for Congress to take on the traditional third rail of American politics, Social Security, and reform it successfully for the next generation. I've never been fond of having a dollar figure as the target, because if you frame this as we've got to get $1 trillion or $2 trillion or $4 trillion, you'll make policy mistakes. Instead, I think we should look at it as an opportunity for reform. Real reform of Social Security, real reform of Medicare, real reform of Medicaid. If we undertake those reforms, we'll get the dollar savings that stabilize debt to GDP, and $4 trillion is about what we need, but they'll last. If you just get the savings and don't change the programs, we could have a problem again in the future. For Republicans, they should recognize that this is not merely about cutting government spending. It's about pro-growth policies. Everyone is committed to pro-growth policies in principle, but at this moment, to drive directly toward a sovereign debt crisis is anti-growth, anti-jobs, and dangerous. The best thing they could do would be to support broader economic growth by undertaking these reforms. In the end, the political system responds to retail politics. And so the real question is, does the American public understand that the status quo is dangerous to our future? If that understanding becomes broad and deep enough, the political system will have to respond. I hope it happens in the committee this fall. If it doesn't, I hope it happens in the next Congress and as quickly as possible. Anyone who looks at projections of the U.S. federal debt sees that we are already at very high levels of debt to GDP. 90% gross debt, 70% debt in the hands of the public. Those are historically high numbers and dangerous ones for our economy. But even worse, going forward, there's quickly going to pass 100% debt to GDP and then accelerate from there. That's an unsustainable trajectory that will lead to a debt crisis without any question. In the end, Social Security is in trouble, and it's in trouble because it's a system built on using the payments of current workers to pay the benefits of current retirees. And that equation is going to change. As the baby boom retires, we're going to have fewer workers for every retiree, and the program as it's currently designed simply will not be able to keep up. We need to reform the system so that the benefit payments are in line with the kind of revenues that we're going to get in the future.